Hello, everyone. What if the toughest talk you have on your calendar is the fastest way to earn trust, protect culture, and keep your best people from this week on? Well, today at the People Strategy Forum, we're going to talk about having those tough conversations. Our topic today is having tough conversations as a first time manager. And our guest is Courtney Ramsey, a leadership speaker and trainer with 20 years of learning development and HR experience who equips emerging leaders to stop hitting snooze on hard conversations and act with clarity and care. Her keynotes and workshops translate nerves into know-how with impactful language that she gives managers and how that they can really empower their conversations. So if you're leading people or leading managers, this playbook is for you. So I'd like to welcome Courtney Ramsey. Welcome,
Thank
Courtney.
you. Thank you, Sam. It's such a pleasure to be here today.
Yes, yes, for sure. And as we do as a custom of kicking off our conversations is I would love for our listeners to learn a little bit more about you. I mean, how did you get to where you are today and what really gave you the passion to help managers succeed?
Wow, so that's a great question. I have a long history in corporate retail. So my first job out of college was actually at Neiman Marcus, actually in their buying program. It sounds really glamorous, right? And then later on went on to work for Zale Corporation, which is all those jewelers you typically find in the mall, now part of Signet Group, and most recently J.C. Penney. And in each of those positions, I got to talk to a lot of our store employees and even train some of our store employees on being a better leader for our field. And I've noticed when I was trainer before I was technically a leader, which is kind of funny. I was training leaders on how to be leaders. Technically, I had not yet led a team. And the crazy thing is I noticed that when I actually did become a leader of a team, it was so much harder than I thought it would be.
Hmm.
All those things you learn about in theory are sometimes really hard to implement in real life. And that's what's really given me the motivation to continue to want to help leaders, especially new leaders, because I personally know how hard it is to be a leader of a team. And especially when you are being promoted from being that rock star, superhero, individual contributor. And now you have to, I call it take off the cape and train or lead a group of people, night and day difference into what
Yeah.
you're used to doing. So I just want to help people make that transition as easy as possible.
Yeah, and that seems to be the biggest thing with organizations is that they find they think about promoting somebody that's a stellar individual contributor. Hey, they're a high performer, and we're going to make them a manager. And
Yeah.
then they get into that manager role and are like, oh my god, I've never done this before,
It's like
and
a
then
deer
they
in the
flail.
headlights. And it's the worst feeling because if you're used to being the rock star of your team and suddenly you're failing miserably,
Yeah,
it hurts. It
right.
literally hurts.
And sometimes these new leaders resort to uh, role models, good and bad, that they think that they're supposed to act as a leader, and sometimes it's leading with fear or being trying to remain everybody's best friend. And so, what are the common pitfalls do you see in first time leaders?
Usually, I see the majority going into the latter bucket you mentioned.
Uh,
So, especially for leaders who used to be at the same level as their team and now they got promoted up to lead their former peers. It's really hard to go from being someone's friend at work and peer to having to now be their boss. And it's awkward because you're like, I don't want to lose this fantastic relationship I have. I mean, it's part of what makes going to work fun. So, you don't want
yeah,
to trash that, but there definitely have to be some changes. So I typically see people fall into the trap of erring on too much hands off and avoiding the harder conversations, avoid giving critical feedback because they do want to maintain that former friendship they had, but they don't realize it's costing them in the long run.
yes. And so, and then every one of these new leaders, I mean, they of course they have a trusted friend and colleague that they've been working with. A problem comes up, they have to have a tough conversation. What is the mindset that new leader needs to have to prepare for that conversation?
So I think the first mindset I would say you have to have is knowing that, first of all, this is your job now. If you are not doing this, you are not doing your job as a leader.
Hmm.
So I think that kind of helps give you permission to have the conversation because you know in your heart, if you're not doing this, if the person doesn't understand where they need to change or what they need to keep doing because they're doing it well, then they're not getting the feedback they need to be their best self at work. So the mindset of this is my job is probably one of the bigger things I need people to think about first. And then I think we need to trash that misconception that conflict of any sort is bad.
Mhm.
The way we sometimes address things that even might be a bit of a conflict or things that are more critical in terms of feedback, that can actually deepen your relationship and strengthen it. We all think in our heads it's just going to tear everything down and we're going to never recover from it, when in fact it can actually make the relationship stronger.
So take me through that journey. How should a new manager prepare for a tough conversation?
Gotcha. So, the couple things I would recommend when you're thinking through how you would prepare for a tough conversation is first of all, think about the why. Why do you want to have this conversation? And usually you have to go kind of deeper than surface level. So, for example, let's say you had someone in a meeting who said something kind of sharp and cutting and kind of undermined you in front of your team, and you're kind of taken aback by that and you don't know what to do about it. Think about why you might want to address it. Well, at the surface level, you're probably ticked off and you're
Yeah.
probably annoyed and you're probably a little like ego hurt, right? But when you dig deeper, it's probably because you want this person to have a good, mutual, respectful relationship with you. You want them to know they said something that didn't sit right with you because there's a good chance they didn't know.
Hmm.
And you want to have a strong team moving forward. You also probably want to have the kind of relationship with this person where you can talk about the hard things because something bigger is going to come up eventually. And you want
Right.
to be able to have that safety in your relationship. So instead of coming at the person saying, "Hey, Sam, we need to sit down and talk about what you said because that was really not right. Like, I'm really bothered by that." That feels a little more like I'm coming at you. But if I came to you and said, "Sam, I want to talk to you about something you said in our last meeting that's been kind of bothering me. And the reason it's bothering me is I want to have the kind of relationship with you where we can talk about hard things and we have a mutual respect for each other. And I want us to feel comfortable saying things that maybe are a bit uncomfortable, but we know we need to talk about. So would you be okay with that? Can we talk about something that maybe happened a little while ago?" And then you can start going into it. But for me, if you know your why, and it's a bigger, long term, I want a strong relationship, I want better performance for our team, something greater for the greater good, if you will.
Hmm.
If you get that right first and you lead with that, that's a really good way for you to start prepping to have that conversation.
Okay. So basically making sure that you have the facts, you explain the ideal outcome that you like to have for the discussion and be kind of vulnerable, making sure that
Yes.
you're keeping that bias and defensiveness out of the
Yeah,
conversation. And you're identifying that, you're pre-thinking this, right? So this is before the meeting.
you're
Okay.
correct. You're correct. I like to call that an intent statement
Okay.
because we always, when we go into something, we usually have our intent, but we don't always share it out loud. And unfortunately, people can jump to negative conclusions if we don't actually take the process and say the intent out loud. So if you can let the person know that you're coming at this from a really solid, good-hearted place, that you want the best for both of you, that you are, to your point, not coming at this with a "you did this wrong and we're going to fix it." It's more of a mutual conversation. You would be
Hmm.
amazed at how much better that conversation goes. So, yeah, to your point, a lot of pre-work has to happen for you to really get right and think through what it is you really want so you can say those words out loud. And you also mentioned vulnerability. I know that's something that a lot of us, especially if you're like me, you're Gen X and you started working back in like the 90s, early 2000s, you weren't always told that was okay to show at work. I'm a firm believer that when having a tough conversation, vulnerability is key.
Hmm. Yeah, that brings the humanity out,
It
and
does.
yeah, makes things real, right? So the next thing is we've done our pre-work, we've kind of framed the conversation, and then we need to actually schedule the conversation and set the stage.
Mhm.
What's the best environment or things that we can should consider as a leader to ensure that we have a healthy conversation?
Gotcha. So, environment wise, that could be a tough one because sometimes perceptions kind of go crazy when, you're having most conversations in your office with the door wide open, but all of a sudden it's Courtney and Sam behind closed doors, like, ooh, something must be going on
Yeah.
here. Right. So really think about how you can have a conversation in the safest environment that's not going to throw someone off. It might not be your office. It might not be behind closed doors. Some of the hardest conversations I ever had with my boss back at JCPenney was us just walking down the hallways, not the ones that had lots of traffic, obviously,
Mhm.
right? But sometimes there's something, and you probably noticed it too. Have you ever had a tough conversation while taking a walk with someone or when you're in a car and you're side to side? I
Yes.
don't know
Yeah.
if it's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't realize it, but it's easier to have a tough conversation when you're shoulder to shoulder versus facing each other.
Uh,
So maybe just taking a walk to have that conversation could be appropriate depending on how deep you need to go. If it is something deeper, you do need to go into a place where you have lots of privacy. But if it's something that maybe could be resolved with taking a walk, that can be a great way to do it.
Yeah. So really judging the intensity of the conversation, how sensitive the nature may be. Maybe it can be handled in doing a nice walk or something like that, to where the sense of
Grabbing a
motion.
coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. The sense of motion and being outside, it kind of takes the edge off a bit. As you mentioned, when you're face to face or across a desk, I mean, that can be very intimidating. Oh, I got to
It
shut
can
the
be.
door. Yeah.
It keeps it more serious, more formal. There, and sometimes when you have that barrier between the two of you, like a desk or a table, there's just something almost like subliminal about
Yeah.
it. So when you're shoulder to shoulder, it feels like we're facing something together, like we're both against the problem. Sometimes when we're face to face like this, it can feel like me against you.
Yes. Now, is there? I mean, you mentioned, kind of like a framing, a way to. I mean, we talked about the preparation of this kind of the script and how to open the conversation. But is there anything else that we need to know as we open the conversation and how we start this tough conversation with them? I mean, you
Mhm.
kind of started with almost asking their permission.
Yes, I like to go that route.
Yeah.
So when I'm thinking of my intent statement, I usually follow it up with the would you be open to talking with me or would that be okay? Some sort of a yes or no question to make sure we're understanding where they are at right now. Because there's a chance, and don't get me wrong, usually it's a slow chance, but there's
Hmm.
a chance they are not at a place mentally and physically to have that conversation with you right now. Or there's just a chance they don't even have the time. Maybe you're walking into their office at 2:50, they have a 3 o'clock meeting. They would love to have a conversation with you, but they literally have to be somewhere else later. So asking permission, asking if now's a good time, is a great way to just get their kind of immediate buy-in. And
Hmm.
don't worry if they say no. You just ask them when a good time would be, hopefully in the next day or two, and get it scheduled.
Yeah.
So, but yes, going back to your intent statement, talking about the bigger why, stating your vulnerability. I mean, it's okay to say, I'm really nervous about having this conversation because I'm honestly nervous. I'm going to say the wrong thing. And this is going to go to a place where I don't know what to say to you or I hurt your feelings. And that is not my intent.
Hmm.
So if you want to put in those emotions of how you're feeling, feel free. That's a good thing. Going back to what you said earlier, it humanizes you.
Yeah, and so let's dive into this a little bit because this can be really uncomfortable for some leaders, especially on a topic, especially when you think about some of those situations where, I mean, there's the performance element where you can kind of frame and the rationality in the business and so forth, but then you have those on the personal side. Somebody comes to work and maybe they are going through a hard time. Maybe they're not taking showers. Maybe they're being offensive in the odor and so forth with and the
Yes.
clients, and we hear complaints, and that's so sensitive and
So
uncomfortable.
sensitive.
How does a leader that's never had that conversation before, bridge that gap?
Do you know this is the one situation that I'm asked about the most often when I do the training workshops around how to have tough conversations? It's body odor.
Yeah.
Or, things like how something that's perceived as more personal, like even how someone dresses at work or things like that. So again, I think we have to really think about being vulnerable because this person, when you start opening the conversation about body odor, they're going to have to be vulnerable with you
Yeah.
and almost putting yourself in their shoes and making yourself equally as vulnerable can be a really good way to start. So with something like body odor, you might go into it saying something like, I keep using your name, Sam, because it's, you're right there. But I can say Sam, I need to talk to you about something today that is incredibly hard for me to talk about
Mm,
because I know that the last thing I want to do is hurt your feelings or make you feel uncomfortable in any way. At the same time, I know that I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't bring this to your attention. So I'm going to ask you to work with me today. Would you be open to having a conversation that might be a little uncomfortable?
mm,
Hopefully, you would say yes, right?
yeah.
Then, kind of step two and a half, if you will, of this process is start with the facts. And this is something that I'll be honest with you, I learned from me being a student of how to have tough conversations. This is something Crucial Conversations recommends. And if you haven't read that book, anyone who's listening, I highly recommend Crucial Conversations. They recommend starting and leading with your facts because those are so much harder to push back against and so much less emotional than opinions or conclusions you might have drawn or things that sound judgy.
Hmm.
So you might say, I've noticed over the last 2 weeks, three occasions where there's been a noticeable body odor. And I've had one or two instances where someone has complained about it. Again, facts. We're not going through, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's just lead with the facts.
Yeah.
It's still hard for them to hear, don't get me wrong, but it's so much more easy to receive versus something like, it doesn't seem like you've been as diligent about your hygiene lately.
Mm,
First of all, what does that even mean,
yeah.
right? Secondly, it sounds a little judgy. So if you're telling me over the last couple of weeks, I've noticed this has been a complaint, or this is, something's come to my attention, a little more factual is usually the way to go.
Hmm. Okay. And then, of course, often what happens during that time is there's, people are taken aback. They feel like that they need to be defensive at times. They may have conversation that says, "Well, tell me a situation when, well, that was only one time." They go into
Yes.
this, and so, how should a manager navigate that type of talk?
So when someone starts to get defensive on you, first of all, I want you to have empathy for
Mm,
them. Because I don't know about you, but I've been in the middle of coaching conversations before, or things where someone got defensive, or someone started the blame game, or someone just did the whole shutdown.
mm,
And it's irritating.
yeah.
It's frustrating because then you're like, I'm trying to help you. And someone's like, and this is the thanks I get. So realize and give them a little grace that we are all human. And when we are giving someone tough feedback or having to tell them something especially hard, all those Maslow's hierarchy of needs you learned about back in health class, think about the triangle back in the day,
Hmm.
those things are showing up to play. So at that very base level, that safety level is coming into play. Someone could very well be wondering, depending on the kind of conversation you're having, oh my gosh, is my job in danger? Am I
Yeah.
about to get fired here? Am I going to be able to pay the bills and give my kids food at home? At the very other level, let's say we go back to the conversation around body odor, that belonging and self-esteem needs come into play there. Oh my gosh, am I being ostracized from the group? Do people hate me? Do people don't want to work with me anymore? Like, so think in mind, people are coming back and being defensive for a very good reason. And while it's really frustrating, we have to realize that's just a humanistic thing and it's going to happen. So the
Hmm.
biggest thing you can do for yourself as a leader is understand that when that happens, I want you to think to yourself, I saw that coming. And remember, this is why they're doing it. And you have to stay calm. If needed, if they start the blame game, you can redirect. I understand Bob had this question or he did the same thing. Today, we're talking about you. Let's
Hmm.
continue on that conversation. So you can, almost like someone's getting off on the bunny trail, you're going to pull them back over and you're going to get back on track. If someone has a comment, well, you never, no, 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 and happy to talk about that at a separate occasion. We can schedule that later on after this conversation. Let's come back to the topic at hand.
Yeah.
Stay emotionally regulated, stay calm. You might want to slow down your rate of speech and you want to bring them back to the topic at hand.
Mm, very powerful. And so, another thing that I often see is that uh, people don't understand the why. They'll say,
Mhm.
"Okay, well," they says, "Okay, well, this is me. I'm bringing my whole self to work. This is the way I like to dress." and and I might not take a shower. And in my culture, we only shower once a week. It's like this is me.
Yeah.
And so, how does a leader navigate that?
That's a really hard one. And my short and long answer, I guess you could say, the short answer is sometimes you can't overcome that if we're keeping it real.
Hmm.
Sometimes people want to truly bring their whole authentic self to work. They do not want to make any accommodations or make any changes because they truly want that to be how they show up. And sometimes we have to recognize that the environment we're in just won't allow for that. And we have to
Hmm.
both make the decision, is this going to be a long-term fit for both of us? Sometimes, though, they just don't realize we're not asking them to change who they are. We're asking them to make small adjustments that will help them be more effective and get what it is they really want.
Hmm.
So, for example, if someone is doing something, whether it's the way they dress, not showering, the way they maybe they're a little direct in their communication style and it's not sitting well, if you could help them understand the effect it's having and how it's not helping them get what they really want, they could be more successful if they just made some small tweaks to their behavior. Sometimes that's the way you could go.
Hmm.
But if I'm keeping it real with you, and I like to keep it real with people, sometimes we have to also realize it's just not going to be a fit in the long run.
Right. Okay. Now here comes the part of the awkward silence, right? So it's like you have the tough conversation. You're like, okay, I said what I need to say, and now
Right.
I need to kind of bring this conversation to a close. How do I
Gotcha.
do this in a graceful way that is meaningful, kind of lowers that
Hmm.
heat level down a little bit, and
Hmm.
then has that person leave the meeting in a thoughtful way?
Well, before we even close it, I would highly recommend that we come back and really let the other person speak their piece,
Okay.
which we've kind of been talking about the whole time. But if we were to go back to the body odor example, for example, if I was to say kind of my opening thing, I went through my intent statement, I asked permission to have this awkward conversation, I went through a few facts. I would then give an open-ended question to get their side of the story. So I might say, Sam, over the last couple of weeks, I've noticed, a noticeable odor. I've noticed really impacting the way the team works with you. I just want to hear about what's going on. Can you share with me what's going on with you?
Hmm.
Stop talking. Leave it really broad, leave it really open-ended, and just see what you get. Because there's a chance this person has no idea what you're talking about. They had no idea this was a complaint. There's a chance they do know, but there's a very valid reason. So, for example, someone I've worked with before and coached, they didn't realize this person actually lost their home 2 months ago. They were living out of their car
Yeah.
and they were showering at the gym only when they could, right? So
Hmm.
sometimes there's so much more to the story that you have to unpack with this person. There's a perfectly valid reason as to why the thing is happening. You would be remiss if you jumped from this is a problem, how are we going to solve it, before asking for what's going on
Hmm.
first. So once you get everything out on the table, then and only then do we start moving to essentially what are we going to do about this? How are we going to solve it together?
Okay. And so that's the kind of a once you hear the side, then there's more of a back and forth of how we're going to solve it together.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah.
As you know, like the best solutions are ones where we brainstorm together. We both feel like we're part of it. We've
Hmm.
agreed on it. The best buy-in you're ever going to get is if you can get the other person to recommend the solution, especially around things like performance, where maybe they're not doing something that you really want them to do, or you want them to tweak, say, their communication style. Like, how do you see it? How do you think we could solve this? If they can say it, I have a friend, Michael Hoffman, he's a speaker as well. I learned from him a long time ago. If I say it, it's truth. If you say it, it's negotiable.
Hmm.
So if you can get the other person to recommend the solution they feel good about and that they're willing to commit to you, you're going to have much greater buy-in. If you have to tell them, they'll be like, well, that's a great suggestion, Courtney, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to do it. Right. So the more you can get them to say it, the better.
Okay. And so in some situations we can have this as a feedback session, and in another we can have it as a coaching session, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
so as a should there in most of these conversations should there be a follow up meeting, or so hey, let's meet again, or what are your thoughts there?
I think it depends on the situation.
Hmm.
There are some things where one conversation hopefully would fix it. And that's usually more of a feedback conversation where it's in the moment, it's quick, it's let's have this conversation. Are we on the same page? What are we gonna, okay, we're good. Sometimes though it is something that does have to be revisited and there's follow-up that's needed. When that's the case, for example, a performance issue that you need to see a good turnaround and you need to validate and make sure it's happening, holding someone accountable. Absolutely. Think about what sort of follow-up is needed and think about how you want to do that. And I recommend putting it on both of your calendars from the get-go.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
think about, is it weekly follow-up? Is it bi-weekly follow-up? What is it? But make sure we're very clear about when our next meeting is, what the expectation is, and what you're promising. Because in most cases, you as a leader might need to do something for that person that you are accountable for. It could be more training, it could be giving them a buddy, it could be who knows what, but also making sure you follow through on what you're promising as well.
Okay, great. And so after the meeting, so the meeting closes, the person leaves, and that leader, that new leader is like on, geez, I think that went really well. That went really well. And kind of patting themselves on the back and at the same time, the person that just left, they're like, oh my God, so embarrassing. I'm my time at this company is short. I'm going to lose my job. Um, so how does a leader become aware and then make sure that they are closing that gap?
Great question, and not one I'm asked very often. So, really, that's an insightful question. So, there's a couple things you could do after the conversation is over. You might want to, first of all, email the person and just document. I think documentation's kind of something we mean to do and we don't always do it. So just to make sure we're crystal clear on what we was promised by each party, what our next follow-up is, the changes you want to see, as much as you can, put that in writing because we all sleep at least once in the day. And a lot of times those details are forgotten. And you don't want either party going, did I say that? Did she say, what did we say? So documentation is good. The other thing you might consider doing once emotions are down and regulated, so this could be 24, 48 hours later, is you might want to say, hey, I want to regroup with you, not to talk about what we talked about, but to talk about how you thought that went for us and how I can get better. Should I ever have to have a conversation with you similar to this or with any of our team members later? Because I'm growing as a leader and your feedback matters to me.
Hmm,
So let's set some time on the calendar. I just want you to come to the table with something that you thought went really well and something you think I could do better next time. Because
nice.
I want to get better at having these hard conversations and giving feedback. And I would really like your support in that.
That's cool. I mean, that's just like bringing the vulnerability full circle, right? You started with it and you're ending with it, and you're really making it real. That's great.
Yeah. And you're letting it know that feedback is a thing, right? It's
Hmm.
not like just something my boss gives me. It's like I'm looking for you to give me feedback on how I can be better too. This is the way our team works.
Yeah,
Yeah. No one's
sharing
paying
and
for it.
sharing in success for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
great. Well, this has been super helpful, Courtney. I mean, as far as having tough conversations, what else would you add to leaders that are listening in right now?
So the couple things I want you to be aware of are the traps you can fall into when it comes to hitting snooze. I like to call it hitting snooze on tough conversations
Yeah.
because just like when you're in bed in the morning and you're like the alarm goes off, you're like, oh, I don't want to do it. No, just 5 more minutes, 9 more minutes, right? We hit snooze on tough conversations every day. Typically, we do that because we're really scared of what the other person is going to think of us, and we're scared of doing more harm than good. So again, recognize that that snooze trap is real. You're going to want to put it off, but I want you to think of it as letting a weed grow in your garden. Let's say
Hmm.
you walk out today, you have a fantastic garden going on. I'm personally not a gardener, but let's pretend, right? And there's a little weed that does not belong there. And you're like, you know what? I'm running out the door. I don't want to get my hands dirty. I don't want to do that right now. I'll deal with it later. And you put it off and you put it off and you put it off. That little weed with very baby little roots that would have been so easy to pluck out of the ground 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a month later, now it's a big daddy weed.
Yeah.
And it has deep roots. And now you can't just pluck it out. You got to get a shovel, you got to get poison, whatever it might be. The same thing happens with tough conversations. So the more you hit that snooze button on tough conversations, you are giving that problem time to grow roots.
Yes, and
So,
and to continue on with that metaphor, I mean, if you let weeds grow in your garden, it starts killing all the other flowers, right?
yes, it's doing harm, not just for you or that that one little weed. It's putting a damper on the entire thing. And the same thing can happen. There are leaders who put off having the tough conversations with the lower performers, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe they put off having the hard conversation with the really stellar performer who's also a jerk.
Mm,
And it's bringing down the team because they're just not a fun person to work with, right? You have to realize that when you hit snooze, you are having an effect on the rest of the team as well as yourself. I'm
yes,
starting to think of tough conversations almost as a form of self-care because when you think about it, those tough conversations you're putting off, not only is it growing roots, it's making things harder for the team and the business, it's making things harder for you. You're stressing out. It's probably taking up a lot of real estate in your brain. It could be waking you up at 2 in the morning and making you have so much stress that it's impacting your sleep and your health. So the faster you can take care of this problem, the faster you can stop hitting snooze, the better off you are overall.
right. Well, thank you, Courtney. So for our listeners out there that want to know more about this, want to be involved in some of your workshops and so forth, how can they get a hold of you? What's the best way there?
Absolutely. You can go to CourtneyRamseySpeaks.com, and that's Ramsey with an E, not an A. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. If you just put in the search bar of LinkedIn, Courtney Ramsey Dallas, I should pop up for you. And then from there, let's schedule a discovery call. Let's find out what you need, whether it's group coaching or group workshops or keynotes for conferences, breakouts for conferences. I would love to be of service.
Great. Well, Courtney, thanks for giving first-time managers the courage and the structure to stop hitting snooze and lead with clarity. Is there anything that you're looking forward to in this new year coming up?
Gosh, and the new year coming up, I haven't even thought that far. I'm just dealing with today. So I'm really looking forward to continuing to share the quit hitting snooze, especially on tough conversations message with more audiences. Because especially in the times we live in now with so much, it almost seems like fragility in
Mm,
relationships where people are having a lot of fear around saying what truly needs to be said, or people are feeling so much like they can't say what they need to say or be their true selves. They feel more lonely. I feel like never has there been a better time for us to get more comfortable having those tough conversations.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, to our listeners out there, if this has helped you, please subscribe, rate, and share this with one of your new managers that needs to have a little bit of direction, and definitely reach out to Courtney for additional help there. But this has been a great conversation, Courtney. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam.
All right, and to all our listeners, we'll see you next week on the People Strategy.